In 14 years behind the guest services desk, I watched thousands of passengers pay full price, wait in standby lines, and accept no as a final answer for things the cruise line would have given them if they'd known the exact words to ask. And I know what you're thinking. Cruise lines don't hide anything. They just don't advertise every single service. You're right, but there's a difference between not advertising and actively training staff to only offer these things when passengers use specific language. I spent 14 years on the other side of that desk. I know which one this is. My name's David. I just left a 14-year career working guest services on cruise ships. Started on mainstream lines, worked my way up through premium, finished my last 2 years on a luxury line. I'm not going to tell you which lines, I'll never do that, but I will tell you this: I just left. No employer to protect, no policy to spin. I can say what active crew can't. These aren't loopholes, these aren't tricks. These are real services, real accommodations, real workarounds built into the system. But cruise lines trained us to give them out selectively. If you knew they existed and asked the right way, you got them. If you didn't, you paid more or went without. I'm going to show you 7 things available on almost every cruise line. Things I gave passengers every single week in the exact words that unlock them. Not because the system's rigged against you, but because the system only works for people who know it exists. Let's start with the one that happens before you even board the ship. Secret number 1. Room upgrades happen at the pier, not just online. You've been there. You check for upgrades on the app 2 weeks before your cruise. Nothing available. You check again 3 days out. Still nothing. You assume that's it. The ship's full. Your cabin category is locked in. End of story. Here's what's actually happening. There's a 2 to 4 hour window on embarkation day when cabin inventory reshuffles. Late cancellations come through. People no-show. Group blocks that were on hold expire. Prepaid upgrades that didn't clear the credit card system fall back into inventory. The pier staff, the folks checking you in at the terminal, they have access to inventory the call center doesn't see yet. It's live, it's changing every 20 minutes, and most passengers have no idea. So here's what you say at the check-in desk or at Pier-side guest services. I know this is last minute, but if anything is opened up in a balcony cabin, I'm happy to pay the difference today. Why these words work. Today signals you're ready to transact right now. Pay the difference shows you understand it's not free. You're not asking for a favor, you're creating urgency for staff who are authorized to sell that inventory before the ship leaves port. I had a couple in their late 60s, booked an inside cabin on a 7-day Caribbean. They asked me this exact question at check-in. Balcony cabin hadn't cleared from a group block. It was sitting there. $180 to upgrade. They asked at the right moment. 2 hours later, that cabin would have gone to the upgrade list or gotten sold at double the price. They paid, I processed it, they walked on with a balcony. Now, honesty beat. This doesn't work if the ship is completely sold out. And luxury lines manage inventory differently. They don't release cabins the same way. But mainstream and premium lines? I upgraded passengers this way multiple times per sailing. You just have to ask at the pier. That's about timing. This next one's about persistence. Secret number 2. Fully booked specialty restaurants have hidden availability. You're 3 weeks out from your cruise. You want to book the Italian specialty restaurant. You log into the app or the website. Fully booked. Every single night of your 7-day cruise. You figure you're out of luck. Not quite. Most specialty restaurants hold 10 to 20% of their tables. They hold them for VIP passengers, for suite guests, for service recovery situations, and for same-day walk-ups. Those holds release at different times throughout the cruise. Sometimes it's the morning of. Sometimes it's 2 days before. The system shows fully booked because the public inventory is gone. But there's a second layer most passengers never ask about. Here's what you say at guest services or directly at the restaurant host stand. I know the system shows fully booked for Thursday at 7. Why these words work. Hold releases. Tells the staff you understand how inventory actually works. You're not asking them to squeeze you in. You're asking them to check a different layer of availability. And because you're being specific, Thursday at 7. Not just sometime this week. They're more likely to work with you. This isn't guaranteed, but I'll tell you what, this works more often than not, especially if you're asking for early seatings or late seatings. The 7:30 prime slot? Harder, but 5:30 or 9? You've got a much better shot. That one saves disappointment. This next one saves money. Secret number 3. Crew can remove charges before they post, but only in a 24 to 48 hour window. You're checking your account on the app. You see a charge you don't recognize. $18 cocktail you never ordered. Automatic gratuity that looks like it doubled. Spa product the attendant said she was just showing you. You screenshot it, you're annoyed, but you figure you'll deal with it later. Don't wait. Charges go through 3 stages. First stage, pending, 0 to 24 hours. Second stage, posted, 24 to 48 hours. Third stage, settled, after 48 hours. In that first window, crew can remove a charge with 1 click. No manager approval, no paperwork, 30 seconds. After 48 hours? Now it's manager approval, documentation, vendor sign-off, sometimes a week of back and forth with the billing department. Here's what you say at guest services as soon as you notice the charge. I'm showing a charge from the pool bar on Tuesday. I didn't make that purchase. Can you remove it before it posts? Why these words work. Before it posts shows you understand the system. You're making their job easier. Staff are way more likely to help you quickly when you're working with their process instead of against it. I can't tell you how many passengers came to me on day 7 with a week's worth of mystery charges. If they'd come to me the same day, 30 seconds, done. Have a great cruise. Day 7? 15 minutes. I'm filling out forms. Maybe you get a credit. Maybe it takes until after you're home. Now, honesty beat. If the charge is legitimate and you just forgot you bought that cocktail, this doesn't work. I'm not telling you to dispute real charges, but if there's genuinely an error, and there are errors, card readers misfire, servers hit the wrong cabin number, timing is everything. Secret number 4. Priority tender tickets aren't just for suite passengers. Tender port. The ship can't dock, so they send small boats to shuttle passengers to shore. You're standing in the atrium. You hear the announcement. Suite passengers, loyalty members at the top tier, passengers with mobility accommodations, report to Deck 4 for priority boarding. Everyone else, you'll get a ticket with a time, probably a 90-minute wait. You assume that's just how it works. Suite passengers get perks. You don't have a suite, so you wait. But here's what most passengers don't know. Priority tender access is also given for documented medical needs, mobility issues, and certain excursion bookings. The suite passengers get it automatically. You have to request it. But if you have a legitimate reason, it's available. Here's what you say at guest services the day before a tender port. I have a mobility concern that makes standing in long lines difficult. Is there a priority tender accommodation available? Why these words work. Accommodation is the key word. It shifts the conversation from a perk request to an accessibility request. It shifts the conversation from a perk request to an accessibility request. That gets handled under a completely different policy framework, and crew have more discretion to say yes. Now, honesty beat, and this one matters. You need a legitimate reason. This is not about cutting the line because you don't feel like waiting. But if you've got knee pain, balance issues, fatigue that makes standing for an hour and a half difficult, a condition that makes crowds overwhelming, this accommodation is for you, and you're allowed to ask for it. Okay, everything so far? Standard operations that most crew know about but won't offer unless you ask. These next 3? These are the ones I wasn't supposed to talk about. Secret number 5. There's a compensation formula for complaints, and it's tiered. Most cruise lines use an internal compensation grid. I've seen versions of it at every line I worked. Minor inconveniences. Room service was cold. Towels weren't restocked. That gets you onboard credit or drink vouchers. Service failures. Excursion missed the ship. Cabin wasn't ready until dinner time. That's partial refunds or bigger credits. Health and safety issues, food poisoning, injury, Medical negligence. That's full refunds or future cruise credits. The amount gets calculated based on severity, your fare class, and how you escalate. Staff have discretion within those tiers. A guest services agent might have authority to offer $50 to $200 onboard credit without asking a manager. Above that, it goes up the chain. But here's the thing. How you ask determines where in that range you land. Here's what you say at guest services, calm and specific. I experienced a problem with my cabin air conditioning. It affected 2 full days of my cruise. I'd like to know what accommodation is available to make this right. Why these words work. Accommodation is the internal term. Make this right invites them to offer solutions rather than you demanding a specific amount. You're being reasonable, you're being clear, and you're giving them room to help you. Staff will go higher in their discretionary range when you approach it this way. I had a woman whose cabin AC died on day 2. Maintenance couldn't fix it until day 4. She came to my desk, didn't yell, didn't threaten to never cruise again. She explained the situation. Told me she barely slept. It was 85 degrees in the cabin. She spent 2 days essentially living in the public areas. I moved her to a new cabin and gave her $200 onboard credit. Discretion I had. Situation warranted it. She asked the right way. 2 hours later, guy comes up. Same problem. AC died. Same timeline. He yells at me for 10 minutes, tells me I'm incompetent, tells me the cruise line is a scam, demands a full refund on the spot, threatens to call his lawyer. I moved his cabin. That's it. Same problem, wildly different approach, wildly different outcome. Now, this doesn't mean complain about everything to rack up credits. It means if something genuinely goes wrong, something that affects your cruise in a real way, there's a system in place to make it right. Knowing how that system works changes what you get. Secret number 6. Onboard credits expire, but they don't have to. You got $100 in onboard credit through a booking promotion. Last day of the cruise, you check your account. $60 left. You assume it's gone. You figure the cruise line keeps it. Most onboard credits do expire at the end of the cruise, but a lot of them can be converted. You can apply them to your final bill to cover charges you already made. You can use them to prepay gratuities. On some lines, you can even shift unused credit toward a future booking. The process isn't automatic. Most passengers don't know to ask. Here's what you say at guest services on the last day or the day before. I have $60 left in onboard credit. Can that be applied to my final bill or converted to cover gratuities? Why these words work. You're offering the solution. You're telling staff exactly how to help you. They're way more likely to say yes when you're doing half the work for them. Honesty beat. This depends on the type of credit. Promotional credit works differently than compensation credit, and policies vary by line. Not every credit is convertible. But I processed requests like this regularly, especially on premium lines. Asking costs you nothing, and the worst they say is no. Now, there are 12 other credit and billing situations like this covered in the Cruise Insider's playbook, including the full dispute scripts for every charge type and exactly who to escalate to when guest services says no. It's at davidcruises.com. And if you use code YOUTUBE25, you'll get 25% off. Links in the description. Secret number 7. Final night billing disputes get settled differently, and it's your biggest leverage. Most passengers review their bill for the first time on the last night of the cruise. That's when it shows up under your door, or when you finally think to check the app. You find a problem. Spa charge you didn't authorize. Bar tab that's double what you remember. Photo package you explicitly declined. You go to guest services. By the time you get there, accounting has already closed most of the vendor reports. The spa submitted their charges 2 days ago. The bar closed out yesterday. But here's the thing. There is enormous pressure on the guest services team to resolve billing issues before disembarkation. Cruise lines know that delayed disembarkation causes chaos. Missed flights, angry passengers at the gangway, Port Authority complaints. That pressure works in your favor if you know how to use it. Here's what you say at guest services on the final night. I'm reviewing my final bill and there's a $400 spa charge I didn't authorize. I need this resolved before disembarkation. Why these words work. Before disembarkation creates urgency on their side, not just yours. You're not being difficult. You're being clear about your timeline. Final night disputes got resolved faster and more favorably than mid-cruise disputes because staff priority shifts to getting people off the ship on time with clean accounts. Last cruise I worked, older gentleman comes to my desk at 10 p.m. final night. Bill had over $400 in spa charges. He'd never been to the spa, didn't even know where it was on the ship. I pulled the vendor charge slips. Wrong cabin number. Someone in the spa transposed a digit when they entered it. If he'd waited until disembarkation morning, absolute mess. Lines, missed shuttles, accounting staff already gone for the turnaround. I reversed every charge in 6 minutes. He teared up, told me he thought he'd have to pay it and fight with his credit card company for months. Now here's the honesty beat, and this one's important. This does not mean wait until the last night to check your bill. It means if you do find something wrong on the last night, don't panic. You actually have more leverage than you think. But here's the thing I'll tell you that I couldn't say when I worked there. Check your bill every single day. Don't wait. Because while final night disputes get resolved fast, they're also stressful, and you're on vacation. The best dispute is the one you catch on day 2. All 7 of these things exist on almost every cruise line. They're not secrets because cruise lines are hiding them in some back room somewhere. They're secrets because cruise lines train crew, not passengers. And crew are trained to offer these things selectively. To the people who ask the right way with the right words to the right person. You don't have to memorize all of this before your next cruise. If you're boarding soon, focus on the Pier upgrade. If you've got onboard credit, know what to say on that last day. If something goes wrong on the ship, remember the compensation language. Calm, specific, what accommodation is available to make this right? Start with 1. Get comfortable. The rest will follow. Here's what I learned after 14 years on those ships. The passengers who had the best experiences weren't always the ones who spent the most money. They were the ones who understood the system. The cruise industry runs on information. They have it. Most passengers don't. And that gap costs you money every single sailing. I spent 14 years on their side of that desk. This is me evening it out. So before your next cruise, take a few minutes. Screenshot the exact words for the situations most likely to come up. Know who to go to, Pier staff for upgrades, the restaurant host stand or guest services for dining, guest services for billing and compensation. Ask early when you can. Ask calmly, always. Ask early when you can. Ask calmly, always. And if someone tells you no, that's not the end. A no from one crew member is not a policy. It's a starting point. Thousands of passengers walked away from their cruises having paid more, waited longer, and accepted less than they had to, simply because they didn't know these things were available. You do now. That changes something. If you want the full version of everything covered in this video, all 47 situations, the complete dispute scripts, the crew cheat sheet that maps out exactly who controls what on the ship, and the first 90 minutes guide that walks you through boarding day step by step, it's all in the Cruise Insiders Playbook. That's at davidcruises.com. Use code YOUTUBE25 and you'll get 25% off. It's written in the same voice as this channel. Plain language, no fluff. Every word earns its place. Plain language, no fluff. Every word earns its place. Safe travels. And if this saves you even one unnecessary charge, one avoidable wait, or one no that should have been a yes, I did my job.